My heart is where the Hebrew home is. For where the heart is, that's where you find the Hebrew home. Hebrew home, Hebrew home. Good morning, Hebrew home. My heart is where the Hebrew home is. For where the heart is, that's where you find the Hebrew home.
And a very good morning. I'm David Pomeranz. I'm your host of Good Morning Hebrew Home for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. And Allison's behind the camera as always. Thank you, Allison, who's doing everything, including sending me menus through David Finkelstein to let me take my mask off before the show starts. So thank you, Allison, on a very David day. My guest, David Siegelman, behind the scenes, David Finkelstein. It's Tri-David Day here in the studio. Allison, it must feel awkward to you to be not named David, to be in this room. And mind, she's nodding, by the way. You can't hear her, but she's nodding. Mind you, to my David friends, David is not in the top 100 names any longer. So of the 100 births in 2019 and so far in 2020, David does not even show up. David is a name that has become very secondary. There's a lot of Hunters and Prestons, but no Davids. So we're proud to hold the stead of the Davids. Anyway, let's get through the key elements of the information that we provide every morning, and then we'll enjoy some time with David Siegelman. So today in history, on August 4th, two significant things happened that I thought were of interest to share today. It was the launch of a very famous song of Elvis Presley's, Hound Dog, was released today and happened on August 4th. And also a famous wedding took place today. Paul Revere was married on this date in history to Sarah Orr. I've never seen any pictures of Sarah, but very famous day in history for Paul Revere and Elvis Presley. In terms of birthdays, which are always nice to celebrate, we have just staff birthdays today because I did not bring the resident birthdays. So perhaps on tomorrow's show on Wendy Wednesday, we can hit the birthdays from today too. For the staff, though, we have Rosina, we have Cassandra Condos, Ingrid Plaza, and Dayton Valencio are all celebrating birthdays today. So happy and healthy birthday to all of you. And in terms of the menu for today, for those who are looking forward to it, David and I were just remarking that thinking about dinner starts at breakfast. Today's lunch, what would you expect it to be if I'm on? It's bologna. I think it's a message. Somebody else tells me it's a cycle, but every time I do the show, it's bologna. So bologna is for lunch. It's preceded by roasted cauliflower soup. And there's applesauce. Of course, there's options if you don't prefer to have the bologna. And dinner tonight will be stuffed sole Florentine with ratatouille. The soup is potato corn chowder. So, and dessert is Jello. So those are your meals for today. We've had your news for today. In terms of weather, today's an eventful weather day. It's not just your average weather day. There are tornado warnings in effect from now until 4 o'clock in the entire region. It's the remnants of a storm. It's named Igles. What's the name of the storm? Isaias. They go in letters. So the next storm will be a J. This is an I, Isaias, which is going to give us remnants. We're not getting a direct hit, but we will take on sustained winds today. That'll be in 30, 40 mile, 50 mile an hour, gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, I believe. And you'll see things blowing around outside. Not a day to go outside at all. It'll be rainy, windy, and miserable. Much better tomorrow. So temperature is going to be not that warm, not that cold. I think we're getting 70s and 80s today, but it's really a story of wind and rain and misery. A good day to stay inside. A good day to not have an umbrella outside, which is going to be blown inside out. So there's your weather. And why don't we just broaden the shot now and include David Siegelman, who's joining us this morning. David, welcome. Thank you. You were scheduled with me last week, and my schedule necessitated me to be out last week, so thank you for rescheduling and joining us today.
No problem. I thought you just bumped me.
No, I don't do a lot of bumping because it's very competitive with guests here, and you've already been on somebody else's show. Were you with Wendy, or who had you?
No, I was with Olivia.
You were with Olivia, okay, because, you know, we all have our different styles, and I hope our conversation will differ slightly than yours from Olivia's. There's some basic elements that are probably similar, but I always try to find a little bit of a different angle, and you bring out a little bit of more of the person, because we see people in the halls and walking around, and it's nice to know a little bit more than just what they do for a living. And when I think of you, David, because we talk about it often, it's about being a dad.
That it is.
And I don't know if your kids will participate in watching tonight's YouTube presentation of Good Morning Hebrew Home, but should they choose to, why don't you tell me about your two daughters briefly and mention their names?
Yeah, I got two wonderful daughters. I have Emily, who is birthday's this week.
Is it? What
She's
date?
turning Thursday. She turns 17.
It's a big one.
Yep. And Maya will be turning 13 shortly too. And two wonderful daughters who keep Daddy on his toes.
So both have had significant things happen in the last couple of weeks. So maybe we could start with driving privileges.
Ooh, that's a rough one. You warned me about that too.
Well, as fathers of daughters, and my daughters are older, 24 and almost 22, so you sort of, Dan had done it for me, his daughter's older than mine, and we sort of pass it along. So what's happened in Emily's life of late?
Yeah, so Emily passed her driving test. Very proud of her, but scared for us. She's now on the road, and we're just slowly but surely allowing privileges of driving around and enjoying herself, but also staying safe. Remember, your safety is first, Emily.
So, for our residents who perhaps have been through this dance, teaching somebody to drive is not an easy thing to do. There's an element of trust there. There's no magic pedal unless you have one of those special cars, which I don't think you have, and I didn't have. And perhaps David Finkelstein was through this too, where you are sitting next to somebody who's learning to drive in a way which is, truthfully, there's not a lot of net there. It's just a lot of verbal cues and holding on.
A lot of loss of control, and I don't deal well with that. I have been told I have control issues at times, but especially with my daughters. That imaginary brake is still there, and the handle that
Holding
you
on
can
really
pull
tough.
on to. And
So
and
congratulations
stuff
to
like
her for driving, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
And in terms of Maya, she had something significant happen as well.
So Maya had her bat mitzvah. It unfortunately was curtailed with the pandemic, but did an amazing job. She was actually the first bat mitzvah back in the sanctuary, and it was streamed where everybody could view it, and she rocked it. Really hit one out of the park with it, and we tried to make it as memorable of an occasion as possible.
So for our residents, David, I always try in my show to sort of paint a picture of the world outside of the Hebrew home. For our families that are watching, they're living it, but for our residents that are here, what's it like out there to do an event like that? I mean, it's an important moment in a family. Ideally, you do it in a traditional way. This was not so traditional. Maybe you could explain how you achieved this mitzvah in spite of COVID.
It was a lot of uncertainty for a long time. She was originally supposed to be bat mitzvah back in early June, but we needed to delay it. It just wasn't the right timing, so we pushed it back to the end of June. From a service standpoint, it was fairly traditional, the service. We were able at that time to go into the sanctuary with the grandparents and
So
the
limited
rabbi.
people, right?
Very limited people, small group. We were able to have a minyan up to more than the 10 people,
Right.
and she was able to meet all the requirements. What was great is they did have streaming set up where people were able to view it, and afterwards I was getting pictures of on the big screen in people's houses and so on and so forth, and really made it memorable for Maya. And after that we did a small luncheon with just some very close people. And then we did a little drive-through, like we have the drive-through visits here. Maya had a drive-through bat mitzvah where her friends were able to drive up, throw candy at her. It's a very special thing to toss sweetness to somebody being bat mitzvah. And socially distanced, we also rented an ices truck. Maya loves frozen ices, and all of her friends were able to get it, and and talk to her from a distance and stuff like that, and really made it probably in ways even a more special occasion. Really limiting the numbers and stuff like that really brought out the importance of the occasion.
So I'm impressed, certainly how these things are happening, but in the resolve of people to make things happen despite the odds, right? And I think true too for our residents here that they see that staff are coming in. David has arranged for a lot of FaceTimes. We have the drive-in visits. There's a lot of attempt to create normalcy in not a normal time.
Yeah, one thing I keep telling my family, and one day at a time. Today's day and age, we can't be planning a lot 2 months, 3 months down the line. Let's enjoy every day, which I guess in ways brings more enjoyment to life by just cherishing each day individually.
I think that's very true. And maybe you could talk a little bit, David, how you normalize the care that you provide here. So you went through a phase here, as we all did, of challenges of getting staff in and safe and testing. How is because rehab is one of your responsibilities here, and many of our residents who watch either have been on program or still on program. How do you accomplish that at a time like this?
The basics of rehab pertain during a pandemic, not during a pandemic. It's ultimately about the well-being of the patient, and we are always going to focus on the patient's well-being. What's a little bit different is we may not have as many people in the therapy gym at a time, trying to keep that spacing. We may see you up on the floor, walking in the hallways, or working with you if you have particular needs in your room. In ways, it's actually better therapy, because for those of you who live here, and this is your home environment, we want to see you in your home environment. We want to make the best of it where you're going to be spending day after day, and get you as strong as possible in that environment. For the short-term rehab patients, it's a little bit different. A lot more FaceTiming with families and going over a home environment, whether it's families, pointing the camera at the patient's bathroom or bedroom to meet their needs. But ultimately, it's about what's best for the patient, and those principles still apply.
So it's a very personal thing, I imagine, just from watching your staff over the years, working with somebody who's had an injury or has the need to work on something. Wearing a mask, does that create a different feeling in working for a patient? Does that lack of familiarity create any challenge? I mean, it's a reality. People have to wear masks. It's the proper thing. I'm just wondering, is it more of an obstacle in rehab than in other areas?
Probably the biggest obstacle of wearing a mask is something I'm even experiencing. I'm having a hard time understanding people at times, whether it's hearing them or them hearing me. We all need to enunciate a little bit more, probably focus in a little bit more to hear. My hearing with my staff even is not as good, and that part is probably a little bit different, and we got to focus in a little bit better with that. Probably the other biggest change is touch. We are a touchy-feely profession in therapy. A lot of it's hands-on. We still need to do some hands-on, but we do want to limit it to prevent some of the issues. That's change.
So, Dave, for people that are watching, that live here, forget the folks that are here for rehab for a moment. They're here for rehab, they're getting rehab, but there are people here that are living here long-term. This is their home, and they feel like they're not moving around the way they used to. How do they get about requesting to be evaluated? I know there's not endless amounts of therapy hours, but how does that happen for somebody if they feel they need it?
Yeah, so if somebody feels they've had some kind of change in status, they're not able to wheel their wheelchair as well, or walk, or even get dressed or go to the bathroom like they were able to before, the way to start is to speak to your nurse, okay? Explain to your nurse some of the challenges you're feeling and that you think you would benefit, and ultimately for your benefit would be to receive therapy services. And either the nurse will then speak to the doctor, or the doctor will come see you and the necessary behind-the-scenes paperwork will be done, and we'll get rid of all that aspect, and hopefully get a therapist up there timely to see you and meet those ongoing needs.
Is it fair to assume that people come on and off therapy several times in their time living at the home? As
Yes,
their needs change?
some of us, even in a year not living here, maybe being a little bit younger, we receive therapy once or twice in a year. Some of us a little bit more. And it's not different here. Everybody has ups and downs. Unfortunately, you know, everybody has changes in their medical status, and with that, it requires different needs. You know, for instance, somebody may have difficulty with walking today. Maybe they had a pneumonia or something like that that precipitated it, and next 4 months later they develop shoulder pain that may be a tendonitis or something that would also benefit from therapy. So therapy services are individual. Some people may not need it for several years. Some people it may be every few months.
You know, I always feel badly when you're out in the outside world and somebody's a doctor and all their friends and their friends say, hey, by the way, you know, I have this problem. Do you get a lot of that, Dave? Do people, because I know,
Do I
full
include you?
disclosure, I know that I have several times forced you to examine me. Is that a common occurrence for somebody with your background? Because you have a background, aside from running this, you are a therapist as well.
Yeah, I'm a physical therapist, still licensed, and keeping that up. I do. You know, I probably not as much as I used to. I don't know if it's, I just don't say I'm a physical therapist as often to people. But yes, the one group of people, actually the one person who will never tell me their aches and pains or ask for my opinion is actually my father. But everybody else, yes, will come.
You know, and just speaking back to your family for a minute, you know, to run a family and have two daughters, it's not a one-person show. So maybe you could talk a little about your wife as well. Perhaps she'll be watching tonight as well, and we don't want to send you home with any...
No. My wife knows she's the leader of the pack. Melissa is married now. Actually, September's going to be 20 years. I know you have a big anniversary coming up, too. Melissa is the rock. Probably give her more credit than anybody, as much as it was challenging during the pandemic for all of us. Being at home with children that were Zooming school and all stuck together, I give her more credit than anybody. She really is the rock behind the family and does an amazing job.
Kind of like Olivia's our rock here on Good Morning Hebrew Home. She pops in on other people's shows and pops in to visit.
Truthfully, Olivia, I think, is a little jealous. You know,
What?
first time around I was with her, and she wants to make sure we don't upshow her.
Well, she happened to show up late in the show and kind of frantic face walking in here. So, back to rehab just for a second, Dave, because I want to talk a little bit about the hospital element. You know, for those of us who've worked here for many years, the growth of patients that are coming here for short-term rehab has changed. The relationship to the hospitals has changed. Maybe you talk and share with both the residents that are here long-term and those who are here short-term, how that works, how this environment works for short-term patients.
Yeah, I mean, as individuals have aged and population has aged, we got the baby boomers getting older. The post-acute care environment has grown tremendously over the last 10 years, and post-acute care being exactly that, those that are coming out of the hospital, whether it's to home care, whether it's to rehab facilities like this, and there's been tremendous growth, but with that, there's a lot of focus with the cost on quality. And hospitals too are looking for quality partners, which we've been able to demonstrate and have strong relationships with the hospitals. They want what's best for their patients, whether it's preventing people from going back to the hospital unnecessarily, to maximizing outcomes, getting people as strong and good as possible, and that's what we've focused on. And we have extraordinary partnership with hospitals, pretty much every major medical center in the area wants to do business with us because of our outcomes.
But the excellence of the gem of which you publish data, which is length of stays, improvement and so forth, this is critical in today's world for the consumer to choose from.
Yeah, it's 100%. Consumers are more connected than ever, whether stuff published online, also what they're receiving from the hospitals. Hospitals are giving the consumer guidance in the way of data for rehab facilities like ours.
Which is very different than it used to be, right? I mean, it's
100%.
You have a much more educated world in terms of making these decisions and so forth, and it's a competitive marketplace, right? There's a lot of places like the Hebrew Home that are providing these services, and you really have to stand out in a way, just not on reputation, but on performance.
100%.
Was physical therapy your pathway always?
I was not a good student back in the day, and I remember I was like early on in my high school career, right about when I started becoming a better student, and my father said to me, here's a magazine, top 50 professions for the next 20 years or whatever the article read, and he goes, read through this. I looked through it, I flipped through it, and I found physical therapy. Knew nothing about it, and I said, this sounds interesting.
In high school?
In high school.
You read about it, and you decide that's the pathway?
That's the path.
That's unusual. So as a 16, 17-year-old, you're deciding, pretty big decision at that point.
Pretty big decision, and
waver
didn't know what I was getting into.
Did you waver on that at all?
I considered going on when I was in PT school to med school, and honestly, being a person who wasn't a good student but became a much better student, I just didn't see myself wanting to go through that much more schooling.
Been a lot of schooling.
Back in the day, but I actually applied.
Please be advised the person driving a black Acura, license plates DHV 77790.
Does this happen on network television?
So Olivia planted that. I blame Olivia.
There's so little overhead paging, and it must be a significant moment to interrupt my show.
Exactly, it's Olivia's fault. So with that being said, I actually applied to a PT program as a senior in high school. It was a 5-year entry-level program, undergrad and master's, not knowing what I was getting into, but it's been a rewarding field.
It's rare, I find, that people have that early notion and stick with it straight through. So when you were in college, it was all for the purpose, for the studying, for the preparation for what you become.
Yep.
I guess a professional career in baseball was not on the top 50.
You know, 5'5", 150 something pound guys don't normally have long careers. So yeah, I decided to steer away from it.
Though you do play this year we're not playing, but generally we have a Hebrew Home softball team of which you play, and it's some bullets to left and make some plays, and it seems like you still enjoy to play baseball, softball.
It's softball. I try to relive my youth. I realize I am not very good anymore. Wiffle ball was more my speed when we played that. But
I roped you into a lot of sports, haven't I?
I enjoy it, and I think my family enjoys getting me out of the house.
Well, you actually brought Emily to maybe it's the second year of wiffle ball. I don't even remember. We've done it.
I think it was the third year, and it was the only year we made the playoffs.
We played long. I remember her, I hope she's watching, hoping it would end, as many of us were. Cause
I think we all were.
Night had fallen in Vermont. It was cold. We were tired, and we played many games.
And you and I are older now. So Emily was probably complaining one of the least. I think we were complaining the most.
I think she was looking to go to Ben & Jerry's or something at that point.
That is correct.
In terms of things you like to do outside of work, I know you're a Mets fan, which comes with its own pain, but maybe you could share with our residents some things you like to do when you're not at work.
Yeah, long struggling Met fan. Also love the Giants. Teach my kids about disappointment through the Mets.
Learning tool.
So, you know, that's great. But other than that, spending time with the family is the major aspect of my life. Love to cook. I've always loved to cook. I was actually a sous chef back in college.
Did Melissa know that when she started dating you?
That is why I think Melissa dated
That's a
me,
good
too.
find. When you find, I don't have those skills.
Yeah, my Melissa, I love you. I called you the Rock, but cooking is not her thing.
Okay.
The kids will joke if mom's cooking, that means we're having breakfast for dinner.
Okay.
Okay, and that's okay. But it's also a great way to spend time with the girls, and we'll go into the kitchen together, and we'll make something amazing together. They're actually home today on this bad weather day baking. I don't do baking, but
Do we know what's being baked? Are we sharing it tomorrow with the colleagues?
I think something can be arranged. I heard something about homemade chocolate chip cookies
That's
and
never bad.
some other things, so we'll see what happens.
So David, I know you came to us, you were working with Health Pro, which is a company that's working at the home. Did you think you'd be spending years at the Hebrew Home? Was this a pathway that you saw? Because we hope it's a pathway that will continue for about another 30 years, because you're still, how many years are you on this campus?
I'm here about 7.5.
That's something that's like nothing, right?
Correct.
I mean,
I heard you only earn a parking spot at 30.
no, I mean, it's
Okay.
truthfully, I'm here at 35, and you don't really become anything until you hit 35, 40. It's our staff are here for quite some time.
Coming here, I didn't know what to expect. I knew a great reputation. I was excited to be here, but luckily I've had great colleagues and supervisors, bosses, or whatever, who's really helped grow me and groom, and because of that, my enjoyment has just gone up that much more. Being able to work with yourself and some of the other senior management here just really has made me want to stay home.
When you were studying therapy, I assume you did rotations with other populations. Was older and geriatric a focus for you always, or did that sort of evolve?
I won't say specifically seniors, any adults, even young adults. I just knew I didn't want to do pediatrics. Sick children, watching children have challenges, I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
But adults, I worked with 20s, 30s, 40s. For a while, I worked in the hospitals, outpatients, and so on and so forth. But then, probably in the last 10 to 12 years, focusing in on the senior population.
Now, just as we wrap up, Dave, technology has improved, right? I mean, in all kinds of ways. So how we treat people today is very different than how they were treated 10 years ago in terms of knowledge, equipment, and otherwise. Has the field progressed as you thought it would? Is there more room to go? What do you see?
I think there's a new day and age of therapy coming. Some of the basics of therapy will always be the same. I think you're going to see telehealth really take off even with therapy. There's a lot of legislation out there with everything that has gone on to promote more and more telehealth, maybe decreasing the amount of in-person visits to therapy, still having some for the hands-on, but also doing some of it remotely. And I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a little less direct patient contact and maybe a little bit more use of machines and stuff like that. But ultimately, the general principles will still live.
Okay. Well, David, thank you for
Thank you.
joining us again. I don't know if this was a more enjoyable experience than your time with Olivia, but I hope it was.
It was a great experience. I'm scared of Olivia, where I will not say it was better.
Amen. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us on August 4th, 2020. Again, not a good weather day, tornado watch in effect. Want to stay inside today and look out and watch the rain and not be part of it. We hope you have a great day. And tomorrow, Wendy Wednesday is tomorrow. I don't know who our guest is, Allison, do you know? Surprise guest with Wendy Wednesday tomorrow. David, thank you for running the board.
Time.
Allison, thank you. And Olivia, nice to see you for the first time in quite a long time. Have a great day, everybody.
Be well.
Hebrew home, good morning, Hebrew home. My heart is where the Hebrew home is.
You seem dirty.
For where the heart is, that's where you find the Hebrew home. Hebrew home, Hebrew home. My heart is where the Hebrew home is. For where the heart is, that's where you find